So yeah, just once again, reintroducing myself. I'm the CEO of the Youth ICT Council, and the Youth ICT Council is a youth-owned and governed NPC, so non-profit company. We consist of members within the ICT sector, whether they are involved directly or indirectly. And the council is geared at, representing the interest of the youth, in the South African youth within the ICT sector. And, we focus on policy directives as well as economical activity at large. And that's why this is also a very important platform for us. And thank you for providing it to us. So my topic today is how do we create a youth-centric built environment for the fourth industrial revolution, which is the new face of the built environment, us, the young people. So the question that I'll be seeking to answer today is, how do we do that? How do we create an enabling environment, one for the fourth, for 4IR? And I'll attempt to give a perspective from the built environment. And how we're going to do that, we're going to use deductive reasoning. So using a type of first principles, a framework of thinking. And I've sort of crunched it into three main bullets of questions for us to come to a more constructive answer to the initial question. So the first thing we're going to do in my presentation, we're going to identify some of our assumptions about 4IR, what do we deem to be true, and break down some of the issues or challenges that are faced by the current built environment or construction industry. And then we can have the fun have a fun discussion around some of our thoughts around what would be solutions. So starting off, what do we deem to be true pertaining to 4IR? So the first main assumption, I think, as a point of departure is the definition of 4IR. And I think, due to the volume of this, of the answers that are coming to this question and how much variances there are in different, answers from different stakeholders, I think it would be sort of prudent for us to say, let's use this as an axiom and let's all agree that the fourth industrial revolution is process automation underpinned by AI. And that will be sort of our agreed definition of 4IR. And then the second assumption is that innovation, specifically bandwidth innovation, and I'm talking on 2 points, spectrum bandwidth, as well as compute power bandwidth, are infrastructure enablers of 4IR. I think also we just heard of 5G and its capability to widen the usage or of spectrum resources, and certain in its ability to bring in new functionalities into the different sectors. And compute power, I think, is another very important sort of a resource for 4IR to occur, especially if we agree that it is process automation. So if you're speaking about smart homes, smart farms, even the self-driving cars, there are certain trends that I'll speak about later in the presentation. However, they are underpinned by new developments around computer processing units, GPUs, and tensor flow processing units, so TPUs, that allow programmers now to program cognitive capabilities onto devices such as refrigerators. And these neural networks, they mimic human characteristics, and we're now able to perform tasks that were once upon a time only previously for human beings, but now we can do that by machines. And the third and final assumption is policy frameworks. We'll assume that policy frameworks are proactive within the sector and they do lead innovation. Of course, this is just an assumption. And one such framework that perhaps would be good to incentivize, or it would be, incentivizing tax rebates for research and development by organizations. Yeah, then the second point is the problem statement. What are the challenges that are faced by the built environment currently? I think the first challenge and the biggest challenge really is poor productivity and profitability within the industry. One of the speakers had spoken about it very briefly, that we are unable to build, yet we have great weather. This, is telling of some of the issues that we have in the construction industry, and the margins as well. They're very low. And this is largely driven by, one, huge demand from the public sector to make affordable households. Two, the relatively low barrier to entry into the construction industry, which then cause that market to be flooded, and it becomes a competition of prices, as well as project performance. Project performance is, I suppose, it's directly linked as well to productivity, where certain construction companies struggle, if not majority, to perform or meet targets. So budget targets, time targets, and in instances where, unaccounted for issues arise, you'd find that the construction companies' profits are wiped out completely. And in skills as well, there's a skills labor shortage. There's been a couple of studies done by companies such as PwC on the lack of interest by millennials for this industry, the construction industry, and this poses a risk in the long run of inexperienced people within that space, and increased risk around safety around those operations. And also, I think with COVID-19 now, construction companies have to invest a lot more into their health and safety processes. And sustainability concerns, which is a new norm. Companies are being asked the question of reducing carbon emissions. So new, developments in materials, concrete, etc. That's quite a challenge now. And now going into a couple of solutions to address some of these issues, and just to round everything up, taking us back to the main question is, how do we create a youth-centric built environment? How do we enable youth participation in this environment? And I think the opportunity for us as young people, especially those younger than me, the digital natives, is to play around, I suppose, these four spaces which I've identified here. One, industrialization, which will speak to automation in my next slide. I'll go into detail in terms of what technologies to look at, and new materials. I've just mentioned it briefly around. This is directly in line to the need, the question around sustainability, green buildings, reduction of carbon emissions, and digitization. We're now seeing trends where you can view a property virtually. There's VR tours, a lot of immersive technology taking the lead there. So these are just some of the main technologies or areas of opportunity or disruption where youth can play for, and obviously new entries into the market. You can always start up a small construction company and getting into the market. And for my final slide, I'm going to speak about some of the great technologies to look at. I think these are the three big technologies to look at if you are serious or really interested in getting into this market, where there's, in my view, massive opportunity across sector. So if you look at drone technology as an example, there's a speaker as well in the forum that had mentioned that her company uses drone technology to do roof inspections. There are, current use cases where drone technology is being utilized for city planning, where you can simulate certain scenarios, and you would know where to put systems. And yeah, because I'm running out of time, immersive technologies, as I've mentioned, augmented reality and VR is being used for tours, as well as selling certain properties without them even being built. You can now get a view or get an idea of what that view will look like in real term. And finally, distributed computation, because latency is going to be an issue when we're talking to anything smart. I think that's a place to definitely be involved in. So from cloud to fog computing all the way down to edge computing, you will find, in my view, that every city will have its own data center, one in the future. And this really, is to drive smarts, so smart driving, smart flying cars, etc. And what we'll also find is that every, I suppose, home also will have what you call edge servers, or yeah, edge computers, where the round trip latency is being significantly reduced as we find more use cases that are latency intensive. So yeah, because of time, that is then my presentation. Thank you very much.